I surprised my daughter with a villa, but her husband's family acted like owners, until my words made them renters again. I had always envisioned my daughter's wedding as a tapestry of elegance and joy, a celebration woven with laughter, soft music, and the glow of candlelight. Natalie, my only child, deserved that, a day to mark the beginning of a life filled with love, the kind of love Thomas and I had built over decades. When she introduced us to Curtis Miller, I allowed myself to hope. He was polite, attentive, his reserved demeanor suggesting a quiet strength. His dark eyes followed Natalie with care, and his rare smile seemed genuine, if restrained. Yet, beneath my cautious approval, a flicker of unease lingered. Curtis brought nothing tangible to their relationship. No home, no car, not even the glint of an engagement ring. Natalie, ever discreet, had bought one herself, a secret we uncovered later, her quiet sacrifice to shield us from worry. Still, her love for him was fierce, stubborn, a wildfire that burned through our doubts. Thomas and I exchanged glances, our unspoken concerns mirrored in each other's eyes, but we relented. For Natalie, we would give her the world. The house was our gift to her, a promise of stability as she stepped into marriage. Nestled in the Boston suburbs, it stood alone on a quiet street, its white clapboard exterior gleaming under the summer sun. Thomas had poured his heart into it, overseeing every detail with the precision of a man who built skyscrapers for a living. The interior was a masterpiece, hardwood floors polished to a warm sheen, custom cabinetry carved with subtle flourishes, and windows that caught the light like prisms. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished into hand-picked finishes and the best contractors money could buy. I remember Thomas's excitement the day it was finished, his calloused hand tugging me toward the front door, his voice bright with pride. "Susan, wait till you see the chandelier in the dining room, it's like something out of a dream." The air inside smelled of fresh paint and possibility, the kind of place where a young couple could carve out a future. I pictured Natalie there, laughing in the kitchen, her children's footsteps echoing down the halls. It was perfect. It was hers. But perfection, I learned, is fragile. Before the wedding bells could even chime, Curtis's family descended like locusts. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, hailed from a remote town, their lives etched in the rough calluses of farmhands. His brother, Travis, and sister-in-law, Jenna, scraped by in the city with odd jobs, their existence a patchwork of instability. They arrived uninvited, their battered suitcases thumping against the porch steps, their voices spilling through the open windows before we even crossed the threshold. Mrs. Miller's shrill tone pierced the air, sharp as a blade. "My God, is this neighborhood a prison? Every house has its doors shut tight. How am I supposed to visit neighbors if no one's welcoming?" She paused, her words dripping with disdain. "And that front gate, what's with the fortress? Bars locked up like we're guarding a bank. Curtis, get some workers over here and tear that ridiculous thing down." My chest tightened, a slow simmer of anger igniting. The gate, wrought iron with delicate curls, was Thomas's pride, designed to keep Natalie safe. I glanced at him, his jaw set, his eyes narrowing as he gripped the doorknob. Inside, the house felt invaded, its pristine air tainted by their presence. The living room, with its cream-colored walls and soft gray furniture, seemed to shrink under their scrutiny. Mrs. Miller paced, her worn sneakers scuffing the hardwood, her lips pursed as she inspected the space like a landlord assessing a tenement. "Curtis, tell the neighbors to be more neighborly," she snapped, ignoring us entirely. Mr. Miller wandered toward the dining room, his heavy footsteps thudding against the floor, his fingers trailing carelessly over the polished table. Not a word of greeting, not a glance in our direction. Natalie, ever the peacemaker, stepped forward, her voice gentle but strained. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, there's a lovely community center nearby. They host game nights, social events, lots of ways to meet people." Mrs. Miller wrinkled her nose, her graying hair bouncing as she shook her head. "Card games? Please. You think we haven't played cards before?" Her dismissal was a slap, and Natalie's smile faltered, caught between politeness and disbelief. Thomas's hand brushed mine, a silent signal to hold my tongue. He was the calmer one, always steady where I was fire, but even his patience was fraying. I could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his fingers curled into his palms. Curtis, hovering near the staircase, offered a weak smile, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "They're just excited, Mrs. Dawson," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "They mean well." I wanted to believe him, to cling to the image of the boy Natalie loved, but the lie tasted bitter. His family's audacity was no accident, it was entitlement, plain and raw. They had brought nothing to this marriage, not a dime for the wedding, not a gesture of gratitude for the house. When they learned Natalie had bought her own ring, they scoffed, calling it wasteful, a formality not worth the expense. Now, standing in the home we'd built for our daughter, they acted as if it were their birthright. The air grew heavier as we followed the sound of laughter to the master bedroom. The door was ajar, revealing a scene that stopped my breath. Mrs. Miller sprawled across the bed, her legs crossed, her muddy sneakers streaking dirt across the crisp white sheets. The bed, custom-made with a tufted headboard, was Natalie's sanctuary, a place I'd imagined her curling up with a book after a long day. Now it was defiled, the fabric smudged with grime. Beside her, Mr. Miller leaned against the nightstand, a cigarette dangling from his lips. With a casual flick, he pressed the burning tip against the solid wood, snuffing it out. A dark, charred mark bloomed on the polished surface, a wound on the heart of the house. My vision blurred with rage, but before I could speak, Mr. Miller stretched his arms, his voice booming with satisfaction. "This room's perfect. Lots of sunlight, great view. We'll take this one." The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Surely, they couldn't be claiming the master bedroom, the space meant for Natalie and Curtis. But their faces, smug, expectant, confirmed the truth. They saw this house, our gift, as theirs to command. Natalie froze, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment, her eyes darting to Curtis. He stood silent, his head bowed, his shoulders hunched like a child caught in a lie. Thomas's jaw clenched so tightly I feared he'd crack a tooth, his knuckles widening as he gripped the doorframe. I wanted to scream, to tear them from the room, but Natalie's voice broke the silence, soft but firm. "Curtis, say something." He didn't. Not a word, not a glance. His silence was a betrayal, and in that moment, I saw the crack in my daughter's heart widen. The audacity didn't end there. Mr. Miller strolled out, barely acknowledging us, and wandered into one of the smaller bedrooms. The room was bright, with pale blue walls and a window overlooking the garden, a space I'd pictured as a nursery someday. He nodded, as if appraising a used car. "This one's perfect. Just right for our grandson." He turned to Curtis, his tone commanding. "Call Travis. Tell him to cancel his lease. He and Jenna should move in right away." My heart pounded, each word a hammer against my restraint. He continued, as if the matter were settled. "We'll put the house in Travis's name. That way, Luca will have a stable home when he starts school. You and Natalie can come back once you have kids. No rush." The room spun, my anger a living thing clawing at my chest. They weren't just invading, they were rewriting Natalie's future, erasing her from her own home. Thomas's hand found my wrist, his touch a quiet plea to wait. His eyes, usually warm, were steel, fixed on Natalie. He wanted her to fight, to set the boundaries now, or risk a lifetime of surrender. I exhaled sharply, my gaze shifting to Curtis. The boy we'd welcomed, the one who'd sat at our table and promised to love our daughter, stood spineless, his eyes glued to the floor. Natalie, though, was no longer the girl who bent to please. Her voice cut through the tension, cold and steady. "This house was a gift from my parents. It's not a boarding house for your entire family. Don't you think you're crossing a line?" The words were a spark, igniting the air with possibility. I held my breath, watching my daughter step into her strength, even as the storm loomed. The air in the master bedroom thickened, Natalie's words, sharp, unyielding, hanging like a blade poised to fall. Her stand against the Miller's audacity was a flare of defiance, but I could see the tremor in her hands, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She was my daughter, fierce yet fragile, caught in the crucible of love and betrayal. Mr. Miller's face darkened, his nostrils flaring as he exhaled a plume of smoke, his voice slicing through the silence. Your house? His lip curled, mockery dripping from every syllable. You really think this place belongs to you? This is my son's home, which means it's ours. And you have the nerve to talk back to your future father-in-law before you're even married? His words were a lash, meant to sting, to shrink her. I felt Thomas's arm tense beside me, his restraint a taut wire ready to snap. My own pulse thundered, urging me to lunge, to shield Natalie from this venom, but her gaze held steady, a lighthouse in the storm. Mrs. Miller seized the moment, her voice a shrill crescendo, as if she'd been waiting for this stage. I get it, it's your wedding house, she sneered, jabbing a finger toward the smaller bedroom. But isn't it ridiculous? 2 people rattling around in a whole damn mansion. What's the big deal if Luca stays here? You don't even have kids yet, why let a perfectly good room sit empty? Her eyes gleamed with false generosity, her words a twisted olive branch. We're not trying to take advantage, sweetie. We're here to help, to support you. You should be grateful. The lie was grotesque, her smirk betraying the truth. They saw Natalie as a servant, not a daughter-in-law. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. I wanted to scream that gratitude was earned, not demanded, but Natalie's trembling hands told me she was teetering on the edge of her own reckoning. Then Mrs. Miller's tone shifted, her gaze narrowing on Natalie like a predator sizing up prey. Besides, you're about to be my daughter-in-law. It's only right you take care of us, cooking, cleaning, making sure we're comfortable. Don't get any ideas about slacking off just because you're the bride. The words landed like a slap, and Natalie's breath caught, her eyes blazing with unshed tears. I saw the girl who'd spent years dimming her light for Curtis, who'd paid for his dinners, bought her own ring, and endured his family's scorn, now pushed to her limit. Mrs. Miller, oblivious to the fire she'd ignited, pressed on. Honestly, looking at you, I can tell you're not much of a housekeeper. Why don't you save yourself the trouble and have your father hire a maid to take care of us? The room seemed to contract, the walls closing in with the weight of her arrogance. Natalie's body stiffened, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade through silk. If you want a house in the city, if you want to be taken care of, pay for it yourselves. Stop expecting my parents to hand you everything. The words were a thunderclap, her anger honed to a razor's edge. I felt a surge of pride, but also fear that this moment would cost her the love she'd clung to so fiercely. Mrs. Miller's face twisted, her voice rising to a screech. Curtis, are you hearing this? This is the woman you're marrying, talking like we're beggars. Since when did her family's money become more important than ours? Curtis, pale and trembling, finally spoke, his voice a desperate plea. Natalie, you can't say that. Apologize to my parents. My heart sank. He wasn't her partner, he was their puppet, his loyalty a threadbare rag. Natalie's gaze turned to him, cold as winter. If you believe that, Curtis, then take your parents and get out of my house. Mrs. Miller let out a bitter laugh, her eyes glinting with malice. You should be grateful to marry a man like Curtis. You think you're too good for us? You're selfish, spoiled, lacking respect. Frankly, I don't think you're good enough for my son. She spun to Curtis, her voice a whip. Do you see now? She looks down on us, just like all these city folks. Curtis wiped his forehead, his voice faltering. Natalie, that was out of line. You need to apologize. Natalie met his gaze, her voice steel. We're not married yet, and you're already letting them claim what's not theirs. That's not family, that's greed. I watched her, my chest aching with the weight of her clarity. She was shedding the illusion of love, seeing Curtis for what he was, a man too weak to stand beside her. Mr. Miller stepped forward, exhaling smoke in our direction, his gaze settling on Thomas and me with a mocking curl. Thomas, I gotta ask, how'd you raise your daughter? I'm seeing a serious lack of discipline here. No respect, no humility, always yapping about my house. It's exhausting. He took another drag, his smile sharp as a blade. Curtis didn't turn out like this on his own. He had tough love, real parenting. That's why he's polite, hardworking, humble. That's why he has a future in the city. His eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a lazy drawl. Once your daughter marries into our family, she'll learn her place. Curtis will teach her how to behave. He'll make sure of it. The words were a threat, a promise of control, and Curtis, damn him, nodded, a small, almost imperceptible motion. Natalie's eyes changed, the warmth replaced by a cold, final clarity. Thomas stared, his face a mask of stunned disbelief, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. I couldn't hold back anymore. The rage surged, a wildfire consuming my restraint. I stepped forward, my voice a blade honed by years of protecting my family. How we raise our daughter is none of your damn business. You have the audacity to lecture us? My gaze locked on Mr. Miller, unflinching. You couldn't contribute a dime to the wedding. You don't have a house, a car, nothing. And now you act like this home, our gift to Natalie, belongs to you? I turned to Curtis, my words dripping with contempt. Your son relies on us for everything. What does he bring to the table besides obedience? Tell me, where does he get the right to make demands? The Millers stood stunned, their smugness faltering, as if no one had ever dared challenge their brazenness. I felt Thomas's hand on my shoulder, a steady anchor, but his eyes burned with the same fury. Mr. Miller recovered, his voice a snarl. Enough. You done talking? So what if we don't have money? Your daughter wasn't exactly hard to win over, was she? His smile was cruel, his tone mocking. You think we don't know? She's past her prime. If she were worth anything, you wouldn't have to bribe a man to marry her with a house and gifts. Let's be honest, you knew she had no better options. The word struck like a venomous dart, and Natalie's body stiffened, her hands curling into fists. I saw the years of her self-doubt flash across her face, the dinners she'd paid for, the insecurities she'd buried to keep Curtis comfortable. My vision blurred with fury, but before I could speak, Natalie's voice cut through, calm and unshakable. Mom, Dad, I'm not marrying him. She glanced at Curtis, then back at us, her eyes clear. We come from different worlds, and this was never going to work. The room fell silent, the weight of her decision a seismic shift. Mrs. Miller's laugh was cold, venomous. Oh, please, don't act like the victim. Even if you call off the wedding, my son would never take you back. Natalie didn't flinch, her voice ice. Curtis, take your parents and leave. We're done. Curtis panicked, reaching for her wrist, his voice cracking. Nat, come on, don't do this. Don't be stubborn. She yanked her arm away, her recoil a silent scream of disgust. Mr. Miller sneered at Curtis, his voice dripping with disdain. Look at you, pathetic. She's not even your wife, and you can't control her. If you let this slide, she'll walk all over you forever. Are you even a man? The insult was a spark in a powder keg, and I snapped. I seized a glass from the bedside table, its crystal edge glinting in the sunlight, and slammed it onto the floor. The crash reverberated, shards scattering like stars across the hardwood, leaving an eerie silence. Thomas moved, a roar of pure fury erupting from his chest. He lunged, his fist connecting with Mr. Miller's jaw, the impact sending him staggering into the wall. Mr. Miller crumpled, choking, a dark bruise blooming across his cheek. Mrs. Miller shrieked, "You're crazy. That's assault." Thomas loomed over him, his voice a low, menacing growl. Say another word, and you won't make it out of this house. Curtis stood frozen, his face ghostly, his hands trembling. I turned to him, my voice sharp with disgust. You said that because she disrespected your parents? If she apologizes, you'll forget this? Before he could answer, Thomas's palm cracked across Curtis's face, the force sending him stumbling to the floor, a red handprint flaring on his cheek. That's for Natalie, Thomas snarled, his voice a blade. For every word you let them say about her. Curtis scrambled backward, his breath hitching, his eyes wide with disbelief. Mr. Miller, dazed, pushed himself up, stammering, "You lay another hand on me, I'll call the cops. You'll go to jail." Thomas grabbed him by the collar, yanking him off the ground, his shoes dangling helplessly. "Shut up," he hissed, his face inches from Mr. Miller's. "I see you for what you are. Even if Natalie wanted to marry into your family, I'd never allow it." His voice dropped, lethal. "You disrespected everything we gave her, tracked dirt on our floors, smoked in our rooms, acted like we owed you. So let me be clear, we're not giving you a damn thing. Get out of my house." He shoved Mr. Miller down, the man collapsing like a broken marionette. Mr. Miller nodded furiously, scrambling to his feet, nearly tripping as he grabbed his fallen shoe. I crossed my arms, a smirk curling my lips. Look at him, running off and leaving his wife and son behind. Mrs. Miller, stunned, grabbed Curtis's arm, dragging him toward the door. At the threshold, she couldn't resist a final barb. "You'll regret this. Curtis could have any woman. Your daughter will end up alone." I took a step forward, and she bolted. As they rushed down the front stairs, a chaotic tumble echoed, arms flailing, bodies thudding onto the pavement. Thomas sighed, shaking his head as their groans drifted up. "Serves them right," he muttered. I looked at Natalie, her face resolute but her eyes shadowed with pain. The engagement was over, the Millers were gone, but I knew this wound would linger, a scar on her heart. Yet in that moment, I saw her strength, a phoenix rising from the ashes of a love that never deserved her. I thought the Millers' tumble down the stairs marked the end of their intrusion, a clumsy exit from Natalie's life. But that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our kitchen, Natalie walked in, her face clouded. She set her bag down with a heavy sigh, the sound pulling my attention from the pot of stew simmering on the stove. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice soft but laced with dread. Without a word, she handed me her phone, her fingers brushing mine, trembling slightly. The screen glowed with an email from Curtis, the subject line stark, "Natalie, since we've broken up, it's only fair you pay me back what you owe." Thomas, wiping his hands on a dish towel, leaned over my shoulder, his brows shooting up. "You borrowed money from him?" he asked, incredulous. Natalie's laugh was dry, brittle. "Check the attachment." I clicked, and my blood surged. A spreadsheet, meticulous and cold, itemized every dollar Curtis claimed to have spent, $11.80 for 2 coffees, $20 for Valentine's Day flowers, $885 for half of 12 dinners. At the bottom, in bold, total, $2,897.36. "I'll be generous, just send $2,897. The audacity was a punch to the gut, and I felt Natalie's humiliation, her years of generosity, $200 for his iPhone, $1,500 for his father's hospital gift, reduced to this petty ledger. Days later, the Millers escalated their vendetta. I was with Natalie at her office, the sleek lobby of Granite and Company humming with the clatter of keyboards and murmured conversations. As the elevator doors slid open, a commotion greeted us, a crowd buzzing near the entrance, their whispers sharp with curiosity. In the center stood Curtis, hunched in a corner, his face pale, but his parents were a spectacle, their voices a cacophony. Mrs. Miller's shrill cry cut through the air. "Where's your supervisor? We're here for Natalie, she owes my son money and refuses to pay." Mr. Miller waved a poster board, a grotesque tally of Curtis's expenses, his voice booming like a street preacher. The crowd snickered at the $20 flowers, the $11.80 coffees, their laughter a chorus of disbelief. Natalie's face flushed, her shoulders trembling under the weight of public humiliation. I stepped forward, placing a hand on her back, my touch a silent vow, "I've got this." My gaze locked on Mrs. Miller, her bravado faltering as she recognized the fire in my eyes. "How much does she owe?" I asked, my voice cool, cutting through their performance. Mrs. Miller hesitated, then shouted, $2,897.36. The room froze, then erupted in mockery. 36 cents? Who calculates that? Someone jeered. I pulled out my checkbook, the crowd hushing as I wrote with deliberate slowness, the pen scratching against the paper. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed the $3,000 check at Curtis's feet, the paper fluttering like a fallen leaf. There. Every penny you claim, paid in full. Mrs. Miller lunged for it, her triumph short-lived as I smiled, my voice razor-sharp. Now, Curtis, let's talk about what you owe Natalie. His face drained of color, and the crowd leaned in, sensing a shift. For your birthday, she bought you a $1,200 phone. When your father was ill, I brought a $1,500 gift. That's over $2,500, and we haven't even counted the dinners she paid for. I held up my phone, receipts glowing on the screen. Shouldn't he pay her back? The crowd roared agreement, their voices a thunderous rebuke. Mrs. Miller sputtered, "That's slander," but Natalie stepped forward, her voice steel. "If you won't face the truth, let's take this to your office, Curtis. Shall we display this for your colleagues?" His face crumpled, the thread a blade at his throat. Mrs. Miller lunged, her hand swinging toward Natalie's face, but I was faster, stepping between them, my stare unyielding. "Put that hand down," I said, my voice a low, dangerous hum. The room stilled, her arm freezing midair, her eyes wide with fear. I turned to Curtis, his dignity in tatters. "You came to cause a scene, but you've only shredded what little respect you had left." I took Natalie's arm, my voice steady. "Let's go. We'll handle this with his company's management, professionally." The supervisor, arriving amid the chaos, skimmed Curtis's email, his frown deepening. Recognizing me as Susan Dawson from Granite and Company, his tone shifted to formal apology. "This is unacceptable, Curtis. Keeping expense logs, demanding repayment, causing a disturbance. This will be reported to HR." Curtis shrank, his arrogance extinguished, his head bowed in defeat. As we walked to the elevator, Mrs. Miller's final shout, "This isn't over," was a hollow echo, drowned by the crowd's disdain. Curtis's harassment didn't end there. Weeks later, Natalie showed me a text from an unknown number, his words a calculated plea. "I messed up, Nat. I shouldn't have listened to my parents. I have nothing now. Can we start over?" Her voice was quiet, resolute. "This is the third one." I haven't responded. I nodded, proud of her silence, a fortress against his manipulation. But days later, a darker blow landed. Natalie walked in, her face sharp with anger, handing me her phone. A social media post, an anonymous account, a blurred photo, edited video clips, painted her as a gold digger who extorted Curtis. The caption was vicious, "Guess she's not so untouchable now." My stomach twisted, rage simmering as I recognized Curtis's handiwork. Natalie's voice trembled. "I just wanted to move on. Why can't he let me?" I took her hand, my grip firm. "He's not stuck on you, he's stuck on his ego. He can't move forward, so he drags you back." That night, I called my college friend, a lawyer, and by morning, we'd issued a legal notice demanding the post's removal and filed a civil harassment report, a shield against his venom. His final gambit arrived in a package, a handwritten letter, its tone a blend of regret and nostalgia, recounting their first date, her care during his father's illness. But the last lines revealed his truth. "I can't accept you walking away. You were my only light. If you don't come back, I don't know what I'll do." It wasn't remorse, it was blackmail, a desperate grasp at control. Natalie's knuckles whitened as she gripped the letter, her eyes shadowed but resolute. "Mom, I'm tired, but I won't let him win." We went to the courthouse, her step steady despite the weight she carried. Sitting on a bench, she whispered, "I know I'm doing this right, but why does it feel so exhausting?" I placed a hand on her shoulder, my voice soft. "You're not tired, you're healing. That takes time, but you're stronger than you know." The court granted a temporary restraining order, barring Curtis from contact, a legal line he couldn't cross. Natalie exhaled, a small smile breaking through, and I saw the woman she was becoming, unshackled, unafraid. Her transformation was a quiet revolution. At work, she dove into projects, her focus a beacon of resilience. Granite and Company chose her for a regional business conference, and she took the stage with poise, her presentation a masterclass in confidence. Executives nodded, investors approached, and her career shifted, a new horizon opening. There, she met Ethan Parker, an MIT graduate and co-founder of East Bay Capital. His thoughtful demeanor, free of arrogance, drew her in. Their connection grew slowly, letters, coffee, business forums, each interaction a step toward trust. One evening, as he drove her home, he stopped the car, his voice steady. "I don't know how you feel, but I like you, not for your work or your brilliance, but because with you, life feels worth living fully." Natalie froze, then nodded, her voice soft. "I don't know the future, but I'd like to find out." I saw her ease, a lightness Curtis never allowed, and when Ethan's parents welcomed her with warmth, Mrs. Parker baking dessert, Mr. Parker praising her poise, I knew she'd found a place where she was valued, not used. But Curtis's shadow lingered. A photo of Natalie and Ethan at a business event circulated, and that evening, she found him waiting outside her office, his face twisted with resentment. "So this is it? You dumped me and ran to another man?" His voice burned, but Natalie stood tall. "Curtis, walk away. I have a restraining order. If you're following me, I'll call the police." His hands clenched, his words venomous. "Were you with him when you were still with me?" Before she could answer, Ethan appeared, his presence calm but immovable. "I don't know who you are," he said, his voice even, "but if you take one more step, I'll call the police myself." Curtis blinked, startled, his bravado cracking. "You're the new boyfriend," he sneered, but Ethan didn't flinch. "What matters is you can't hurt her anymore." Curtis stood frozen, the weight of Natalie's new life, a world he couldn't touch, crushing him. As they walked away, I knew he saw it, the woman he belittled now shone in a light he'd never reach. Weeks later, Natalie and I walked along the lake we'd visited since her childhood, the gravel crunching under our feet, the water reflecting the sunset's golden ripples. She smiled, her voice wistful. "Remember when I collected stones here, thinking everyone was unique?" I nodded, recalling her tiny hands clutching pebbles. "You said they all deserved a home." She laughed softly, then grew thoughtful. "Now I know some things belong in your heart, not your life." Her words stirred me, and I glanced at the water, its surface alive with gentle waves. "What do you think people chase their whole lives?" she asked. I paused, then answered, "Peace. Happiness is fleeting, but peace you build yourself." She raised an eyebrow, then said, "I thought I needed someone's love to matter. Now I know loving myself is enough." I held her gaze, pride swelling in my chest. She didn't need my shield anymore, but as we walked, her hand brushed mine, a quiet choice to stay close. The ducks drifted lazily, their ripples spreading outward, and I knew, Natalie had found her path, and it was enough.